All right, let's move on to 8C, consideration of approving the application for a federal transportation planning grant through MnDOT's Safe Routes to School program. Grants are available for infrastructure and planning projects to plan for increasing opportunities for children to walk and bicycle to school safely. Rushford Pierce School Superintendent Chuck Ayler has provided a letter of support. Estimated cost for grant application is $3,000, of which we may receive some financial assistance from the Rushford Foundation. See attached staff report and grant highlights.
Bernard, I think I've laid out the purpose of the planning grant. We were looking at potentially doing an infrastructure grant. The one that strikes me as being the most straightforward would be to put a trail on top of the new levee that would link Pine Meadows to the 43 bridge. The problem is there's just simply not enough time to get approval from the Corps and from DNR and MnDOT, whoever else, the other alphabet soups that we'd have to go through to get their approval.
So that's denied to begin with?
What's that?
We tried to get a sidewalk on top of it?
No. No, we tried to come off of it.
Okay.
That was a problem. We would run one right along the top. So I think ultimately we would be successful, but it would take a little bit of time. But in talking with Chuck, it struck me that it's probably more important that we stop and we kind of go through a process with the community to make sure that we're linking, or we have ways of linking the neighborhoods that are further out from the Rush Creek Trail, and trying to spoke those communities in, the neighborhoods in, to our existing trail system. So what I did is I reached out to Yagi Colby, who did the Rush Creek Trail. They can put the application together. He thinks it's going to be much less than $3,000, but that would be the top end price for him to put the plan together. I did talk to the Rushford Foundation, and they were very generous on Friday and approved paying up to $3,000 for the application. If we're awarded the grant, there are no further costs. There's no cost sharing. So it's not like an 80-20 split or anything like that, 50-50. MnDOT would designate Rushford as receiving one of these planning grants. They would hire the planner. That's the only downside. They wouldn't necessarily use any planner that we have. And then they would lead the community through a process, much like the Minnesota design team. So we're all ready to go to submit the application. Superintendent has been working on, because the majority of the application is for them, has been working on gathering that information. And the city part would be pretty small. But you know, the way you get these grants is to put as many partners together as you can to show that the whole community is working together on it. So between the school, if the city is a sponsor, those are two powerful organizations for the community. The other is the foundation for the monetary support. There is a group of people that have been meeting for the last couple of weeks, talking about sort of a blue zone or health initiative for the community. And part of that is going to be walking and just and nutrition and things of that nature. So this would lead into that as well. We would expect their assistance also. So we're trying to pull all of these partners together as part of the application process. And I think we've got a pretty strong case to be made. Worst case is we go out, we submit, and we don't get funded. This is a continuing grant cycle, so we would just brush it off and resubmit in the next years, and hopefully get funded at some point. Although I think we've got a pretty strong case for this year. And then if we do move into an implementation phase of actually going to construct sidewalks and trails, we would be able to use the infrastructure portion of this grant. And so because we were successful in getting the planning grant and went through their process, I would have to think that we would have a leg up on getting funded for infrastructure projects as well. So we're not out anything as a community, as a city, other than my time to put this application together, which isn't going to be a whole lot because it's pretty straightforward.
Any questions?
I think we could use it on that dike out there. Remember when I brought that up about people complaining? People walking on that black top, alongside the dike, and cars come along, they don't see them. Yeah. Very dangerous.
Yeah, get them off that road.
Have sidewalk on top of the dike would be beneficial.
I think it's good.
program, and like I said, there's no risk to financially to us, so I move to approve it.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hansi, second by Mr. Dahl. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion passes. Thank you. Let's move on to 8D, consideration of approval following review and any modifications of the request for proposals for lawn mowing and trimming services as drafted by the subcommittees consisting of the mayor, Councilmember Folison, and Administrator Sarvey. A map of the areas to be included is in the process of being finalized, will be available at council meetings, the attached staff report, and draft RFP language. Mr. Sarvey.
Just the subcommittee's looking for feedback from the council as to how we're gonna proceed. We did the mapping, thanks to Councilmember Hansi, came up with 135.8 total acres. There's a few areas missed, but we probably went over on others, so it's, you know, it's about 130, 135 acres total of areas that we cut. The public works guys also, they outlined the areas and they wrote in the box how often, you know, how often they actually cut this. The feedback that I was getting in the subcommittee was that some of these areas we're probably gonna wanna cut more often. So we might have to increase from what we're doing right now as a staff, the public works staff. If you look on the RFP on the last page, this is where we would break out the different areas of town, and we put the acreage in so that when they bid, they would show how much they would be charging for these services, because if things get dry, we may not have them cut up at the Hamley Industrial Park, for instance. We may say, you know, skip a week, or they may decide that they're not going to cut for a week. So we want to make sure that we're not getting billed for it. But likewise, if we need an extra cut on Creekside or up at the Bluff because of something that's going on, we need to know what that cost is, where we're going to get billed for by the contractor. I have noticed AFSCME local and IBW with the intention to do this, because we do have to start the clock, so to speak. Our contract with the unions talks about 120 days, and we do have to show a 10% cost savings by privatizing. So at some point we'll have to figure out what our costs are to do this work. We pretty much know what the hours are, so we just need to plug in the wages and then the equipment costs, which we've started gathering up as well.
On number 4 here, 7:30 to 3:30, you're saying that that's all the hours they could mow? On page,
Yes.
okay.
And I got it again. It's stamped draft for a reason. You know, I want to double check that. You know, we just met on Thursday, so or Wednesday. I had to get this thing out, so I'll double check that. But we obviously wouldn't let a contractor cut grass if it was outside of the hours that we allow our residents to do it. So we have to make sure that this is jiving with.
So what if a guy comes in and wants to mow it all in one day? It'll take 10 hours to do it. Is he gonna have to go home and then drive all the way back?
Unless the council wants to allow them to violate the ordinance on cutting grass.
Well, I'm sure that could be worked around.
You mean I can't mow grass after 3:30
You can.
by ordinance?
You can. There's an ordinance on noise.
You said residents.
Correct. I also said this is a draft, and I gotta look at that number and make sure that's correct. But let's say it's 7:30 to 6, then that would be the number that I'll have in here. We'll make sure that this matches our ordinance.
Well, I mean,